Oh, hey team! Welcome to OK Roll. I'm Maddie. I am here with my very good friend, Dapper Dinosaur, noted theropod.
That's
Dapper,
me.
yeah. Alison, my normal OK Roll co-host, is at a rehearsal for a it's let's see. Our improv theater is working on a new main stage show. I think it's a main stage show. That is Villain the Musical. So it's like a villain origin story improvised musical. And
Fun.
she's in the main cast for that. So that's why she's not here. But I'm super happy to have Dapper here with me. We've got a few friends in the chat. Hi, Icarus. Hi. Let's see.
Hi,
Evil Ginger Miniatures. Dino and a Science, but we're not here to talk science today. We're here to talk science fiction and tabletop role-playing games. So yeah, I'm stoked. Dapper, how are you doing today? If you want to say hi to anybody.
I'm doing pretty well. I got some animation done today, which Maddie, you got a preview of.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Let's see. That's the only accomplishment I got done, but it's my day off, so I don't feel like I need to do accomplishments.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this weekend I almost managed to fully excavate everything off the kitchen table,
nice.
and put it away.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, so what I thought would be fun. You caught the Dapper's game earlier. Yeah, so as probably everybody in chat. Also, hi, Reason to Doubt. As probably everybody here in chat knows, Dapper runs a Star Trek TTRPG actual play over on Top Hats Off.
I sure do.
And I get to play in this new season. I'm very happy. And so I thought what we could do today, because Alison and I had kind of finished reviewing and playing Apothecaria, I thought what we could do today, Dapper, was chat about the Star Trek TTRPG, about its system, and then nerd out about how fun a game it is, and direct folks over to the episode 1 of Star Trek Endurance over on Top Hats Off. So that's
Sounds
my
good to
plan.
me.
That's my whole plan for today. So let me pull up. I am gonna pull up. Oh my gosh. Calm down. StreamYard is over here trying to make me a better, more professional streamer, and I'm rejecting it.
Yeah, no.
I
Only amateur nonsense here.
Yeah, only amateur nonsense. In my domain. Where is? Oh, of course it's right there. I have way too many things running in the background too.
No, I get it.
So, because it's a window, not a Chrome tab. Here we go. So my character over on Star Trek Endurance is our wonderful Betazoid chief engineer Gloriana Dulas, she, her, and so yes, okay, you guys can see her character sheet. Wonderful. Yeah, so I thought we would start. Yeah, I'm definitely not a Trill. I don't know why, Dapper. I guess I was nervous, but I was introducing myself and I said I was Trill on the opening of your stream.
It's okay. People make mistakes. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Even if it did step on Jordan's toes here.
It did step on Jordan's toes a little bit. I'm sorry, dude. He DM'd me. I was like, I thought she was Betazoid. Is she Trill? Did you change it? And I was like, that would change a backstory thing we have together. But no, she's Betazoid.
It's okay. So yeah, let's just talk about the system real quick. So this Star Trek Adventures, now we play first edition. There is a second edition that's out. It does not change a whole lot to the point that it's mostly backwards compatible. There's only room for one Trill on this bridge.
Fair.
So the 2D20 system is the system that Modifius Games has developed for most of their licensed products. They use it for their Star Trek game. They use it for their Dishonored game. There's a whole bunch of other ones that I don't. Dune, the current officially licensed Dune RPG, is a 2D20 game.
Okay.
So the basic mechanic is that anytime that you need to resolve whether or not there is a chance of failure or just any kind of non-optimal outcome, you take you a task roll is what it's called in the Star Trek game. I believe the name changes by whichever game you're playing, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And so all the 2D20 games have two sets of statistics that your character will be using for any given role. So in Star Trek, they're called attributes and disciplines, but they have different names in the other games. Like instead of attributes in I think the Dune one, they're called like values or something. And instead of having like control and daring, it's things like loyalty or truth or power, and your desires for those different things. And there's something else that tells you how good you are at a certain subset of things. And in every one that I've checked, it's 6 and 6.
Okay.
And so the basic die mechanic is a dice pool. And so you roll your dice pool, see how many successes you got, compare that to the difficulty of the roll set by the game master. And to tell whether or not you have generated a success, you add up one number from each category to get your target on a d20. And if you roll that or lower, you have generated a success. So for instance, in Star Trek Adventures, I might say that maybe for some reason, Loriana Dulles is on the sensors because, I don't know, the science officer is MIA or something.
Yeah.
And there is a sensor reading that looks like another spaceship, but it's not clear who it is or whether they have a hostile posture or are just minding their own business. So I call for an insight and con check, because those are two insight, because you're trying to assess whether someone else is threatening, friendly, ignoring you. And that's the kind of thing that insight is for figuring out the motives of others and whether they're lying or something like that. And con has to do with things like piloting ships, but also recognizing what they are, being familiar with shipboard regulations and operations and things like that. And so because those seem appropriate, the default is that you roll 2 20-sided dice. Now, there are ways that you can increase the number of dice that you're going to roll. There are also times when you will occasionally only roll 1 die, but that's not very common. So generally, you automatically get 2 dice to roll. And so the difficulty can range from 0 to 5. Anything higher than 5 is considered to be impossible, and you need to reduce the difficulty in order to make it possible at all. And so it counts essentially as difficulty 6, but anything that is difficulty 6 is just counted as impossible. And if you reduce its difficulty by 1 step through some item or special talent or something, it reduces to 5, which is still really tough. So there are other combinations like control and security is used for aiming ranged weapons, both handheld and on ships. Presence command is pretty common if you want to give like a rousing speech to your crew or something like that. So there's and so some combinations are more common than others, right? Like it's not too often that you have presence medicine. It just doesn't come up much, but it can, right?
Yeah, but you could imagine like insight medicine would make sense.
In fact,
control medicine seems like a role that like a doctor would do.
Presence medicine can actually come up, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's not very common, it's actually pretty easy to come up with scenarios. So, for instance, let's say the doctor thought that the captain was no longer fit for duty for medical reasons.
Yeah.
And so the doctor now has to convince the captain to actually step aside and relinquish command. That might be a presence medicine check. because they need to use their presence to convince the captain of something, and because it's a medical thing, they use their medicine score. So I mean, it can come up.
Yeah. How do you feel about like? Okay, so on the scale of like D&D that has 6 skills, not skills, but like or let's do kids on bikes, right? Kids on bikes, there are only 6 possible roles you can make. Brains, brawn, fight, flight, charm, and grit, right? Those are the only roles you can make.
Right.
Versus like Call of Cthulhu, right, which has 100 different things you can have points in.
Yeah. So this is, I would say this is closer to Kids on Bikes than it is Call of Cthulhu.
Really? Okay.
So technically there are 36 things that you have to roll.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that they're all based on just 12 discrete numbers total. And so while in Call of Cthulhu, every single skill you have has a separate number that you are going to be checking on and looking up and everything like that, this doesn't. This has 12 numbers. That's it. That's the basic rules for your character, are those 12 numbers. So it's a little deceptive when I say like, oh, there's 36 roles. Yeah, but it's not 36 separate roles that you're keeping track of, right? You're not keeping track of 36 numbers. You're keeping track of 12 numbers.
Yeah. Well, and that is like I've been running a lot of Kids on Bikes or Kids on Brooms recently, and I do get a little like, that game is not crunchy. It's not supposed to be. It doesn't want to be, right?
Right.
But I do miss a little bit of the crunch because it does feel where I've actually been working on like adapting Kids on Bikes for like a Wild West setting, and it's driving me nuts what shooting a gun is because it's fight, right? That's the thing. It's fight. But it's also fight to throw a punch. It's also fight, to do a lot of different things.
Should you always be equally good at throwing a punch and shooting a gun?
Yeah.
No, not most people.
Not most of the time. That feels incorrect.
Right.
And so I do like this. This is a nice kind of happy medium. I will say because like I think this does throw a bit of a happy medium for. It's very like, so for Gloriana, I feel like it's very clear what she's good at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She is good at like
people. Engineering, presence, control, insight. She's good at all that stuff. She's good at con. She's terrible at medicine. Terrible at security.
And I have the lowest score you can have for fitness and daring, right? Baby girl doesn't run. That's also not
for fitness and security. You also have the lowest roll, which means you have the fewest possible basically hit points that you could possibly have as a character. You are the squishiest it is possible to be in this game.
Yeah,
which is 8. Yeah,
which is 8. So I do like that about her. She's I wanted to do the opposite of B'Elanna when I was building her.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what's a female engineer that has a different trope, right? That is not the like, bruh, I'm really tough and blah blah blah. So I built her to be, we're about maintenance. We're about making sure our team she's more of a, like, she's good at engineering, but she's a really good manager.
So let's see. Well, I think we'll go into some of another thing that is really important to this game is meta currencies. So for those of you who might not be familiar with meta currencies, because they don't really come up in D&D much, meta currencies are things that are not, they don't always represent something directly tangible in the game world, but they tie into the story in important ways. And they're usually things that can be spent by players or the GM to affect whatever's going on in a particular way. Yeah. And so Star Trek Adventures, as well as far as I know, all of the 2D20 games, has 2. One for the players and one for the GM. Exactly what they're called changes from system to system, but essentially mechanically they're the same thing. In Star Trek Adventures, they're called Threat and Momentum. Players generate and use momentum, and GM generates and uses threat. Although actually, usually it's the players who generate threat.
Yeah.
Because one of the rules is anything that you would normally spend momentum on, you may opt to instead increase the threat pool for doing that same thing.
Which
So
can certainly feel can make the player feel really panicky. And it can, if you're in a dire straits, right, you feel like you're feeding the death spiral.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to some extent you can be, yeah.
Yeah, but what I do like the way, thinking about the way playing the game makes you feel, right? And I think one of the things I'd love to chat about tonight is like how much playing this game feels like Star Trek.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that the roll or the 2d20 system actually is pretty good for. Is it allows you to easily tweak it to simulate genres.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like what the disciplines and attribute correlates represent can be very genre specific. Exactly how you can spend momentum and threat can be very genre specific.
Mm-hmm.
And the Star Trek Adventures game really is tuned to feel a lot like you're playing you're watching an episode of Star Trek, except you're the one making the decisions for a character in the show.
Yeah.
And so it does this in a lot of ways. The rules themselves are pretty flexible, but as you can see, the disciplines are all based heavily on like Starfleet stuff. In fact, those are all actually like sections of Starfleet, like the command division, the security division, the sciences division, all of them. So there's that. Also, the game has a reputation system that affects your standing as a Starfleet officer, which you can then use to accomplish things in game. You can use it to increase your reputation with specific NPCs, Starfleet as a whole, and sometimes even non-Starfleet characters who are familiar with Starfleet might recognize you if your reputation is high enough. So, for instance, if you have like a reputation 5 captain or something,
okay,
the commander of the Romulan ship will probably have heard of that person.
Gotcha.
Just like
it matters if you're Captain Picard or
right. Captain Philby of the whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the Klingons and Romulans know who Picard and Kirk are, right? Like it's not a mystery to these guys. So there's that. So that is one criticism I do actually have for the Starfleet core rulebook. So this game actually has 3 core rulebooks that you can get for first edition if you want.
Okay.
They are largely identical, but not entirely. So there is the condensed rulebook, which basically cuts out all the fluff, which, to be fair, is a big portion of the original core rulebook. A lot of it is fluff. Okay. It also it arranges the rules in a way that I think makes a little bit more sense. That was actually one of the major criticisms of the original core rulebook, was that its organization is somewhat scattershot and confusing.
Yeah, I found it a little hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's not the best laid out of any of the books out there. There's also a Klingon Empire rulebook. So the 3 rulebooks are the Klingon Empire rulebook, the original Starfleet rulebook, and the condensed rulebook, which is usually something that you get in the tricorder box set that looks like an original series tricorder, and it folds out, and you get some game materials and the condensed rulebook. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, the Klingon rulebook is better organized. Okay. It also is specifically designed for playing as a Klingon on a Klingon ship. It has special talents which are similar to feats in Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah.
For Klingons, it has rules for playing as either a bumpy head Klingon or as a smooth head TOS Klingon, which are slightly different, but not by much.
Yeah.
It actually even has a little phrase book for Klingon if you want to incorporate a little bit of Klingon language into your game. So it's got a little bit of that, not a lot. You won't be having any conversations over dinner after reading this in Klingon.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, that doesn't happen much in Star Trek anyway, so who cares? Yeah. If you want to do that, I mean, there are resources available for you to do that anyway. So if that's your thing, is learning Klingon.
That's super. But again, like for that, like make it feel like Klingon. Like when you're watching Star Trek and you're seeing a Klingon ship, generally they're speaking English,
Mostly
right?
English, yeah.
Yeah, but every once in a while you'll hear a Klingon word thrown in, right? And I think that's effective, right? And so if you're playing a Klingon, like that would be
Exactly.
really fun to
It
bring.
also, it also changes up the character creation rules a little bit by. So actually, this might be a good time to go into the two big ways that you generate characters and how they might differ between the Starfleet and the Klingon rule books. So I do want to say there is a second edition of the game out, and the second edition is not as the core rule book does not assume as strongly that everyone is going to be playing a Starfleet officer on a Starfleet ship. It has more rules available for if you want to play on a starship from some other faction, like if you want to play on a Cardassian ship or a Romulan ship or something. But it's also not going to give you the exact extensive treatment for those factions as the Klingon core rulebook for first edition will for the Klingons. So, but the two big ways that you do character creation in this game are either life path or created in play. So if you're going to create in play, basically, you select a species, a name, and you start out with like your role on the ship, and you guys collectively as a group define the ship. So you'll know who you are basically. You'll say like, oh yeah, I'm the Bolian captain of the USS Franklin, a whatever Nova class ship. Okay, there you go. And then what happens is, as you are going through play, you can start assigning more your various points to attributes and disciplines as you think it would be handy. If you find a time when you're like, oh man, I really wish I had a talent to cover this, you can just select a talent, and you keep doing this until you basically filled out the normal amount of talents and values and focuses and whatnot. And then you're done character creation at that point. So basically you're discovering who this character is as you play. Now, for the sake of getting everyone on the same page and not having to pause during a live show for people to hunt through like what talent they want on a particular day, I have opted that my games are going to be going with the life path creation. And so life path creation starts out with, where were you born and raised? And so
Gloriana was born on the Betazoid homeworld.
Yep. And so each choice gives you certain things that you will improve, or it'll say something like select a value, which are similar to character motives. We'll talk about those in a bit.
Okay.
And so you go through where you were born and raised. You go through your upbringing, what you did at the academy, whether it be Starfleet Academy or the Klingon Defense Force Academy or whatever. There will also be some life events that you roll. The default assumption is that you roll them randomly, but like I never want to tie a player down to a random roll that they hate. So
I picked all of hers.
Look, there's a lot of stuff in the game has a table available if you want to randomize it.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not the kind of GM who is going to like hold you fast to a random roll that you don't like. So like whatever.
Yeah.
Just like most TTRPGs, look, if a rule isn't fun for you, then don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not even really a hard rule that you're supposed to roll randomly. It's just available there.
Yeah. Well, and with those life events, a lot of them are like you had to step up and lead and be brave, right? Because that's a very Star Trek thing.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't. No, Gloriana has never done that.
She might have to soon.
She might have to soon, right? But that I specifically want that to be a new experience for her, right?
Right.
I don't want that part of her growth
off camera
to have already happened. I don't want that part to happen off camera.
Yeah. So one thing is, other than rolling on tables to see what, like, if you want to do a random thing, right? Mm-hmm. At no point do you need to roll dice during character creation. Yeah. You're not rolling for your statistics. You're not rolling for how many hit points you have or anything. It is all very deterministic based on your choices. And there are also, by the end of it, there's like, hey, grab like 3 more discipline points and like 4 more attribute points and just put them where you want.
Yeah.
So I do like the life path creation because I think it gives people an already established backstory that they don't have to make up on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, on its own, if you're not super familiar with Star Trek, it can give you a little bit of the flavor of the setting because it will tell you like what the difference is between a colony world a busy colony and an isolated colony versus your species' home world versus growing up on a space station, and how all that feels different and what kinds of things go on at places like Starfleet Academy, stuff like that. There is also a character creation for ships. It's a little bit simpler. Ships have attributes and disciplines. The attributes are different. Instead of control and fitness and whatnot, they have things like structure and weapons and computers and things like that. But the disciplines are the same. And each ship class has a set of default attributes and usually has a bonus to 1 or 2 disciplines. And then what you do is you select a mission profile for the ship. So you might be a multi-purpose exploration vessel. You might be a dedicated new technology test bed vessel. You might be a long-range pathfinding vessel. And each of those comes with a set of scores to put in the disciplines and a set of available talents that you can choose for your ship. And your ship can have as many talents as it has points of size or scale, sorry. And ships just come in certain scales. Scale is measurement of how big the ship is physically, but also how much crew it has. Mm-hmm. So, a giant freighter the size of like the Enterprise D, which is Enterprise D is, I believe, scale 5.
Okay.
But the freighter might actually just be like scale 3 because despite the fact that it's really big physically, it doesn't have a whole lot of people there, and it's not like it's heavily armored or anything like that. So, like, effectively, it's scale 3. So scale is not just a hard and fast, like, this ship is bigger. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Yeah. But, so let's go through the things on the character sheet. So we have attributes and disciplines. We pretty well described those.
Yeah.
Resistance is, if you have a flat number there, then basically that amount of damage is reduced from any damage that you take from incoming hits. Most characters by default will have a resistance of 0. There are some exceptions. There are also some bits of protective gear that you can wear. It doesn't come up a whole lot, but it could. Also, Klingon characters get 2 resistance against non-lethal damage, so there's that. Let's see. So values are an important aspect, not just for roleplay, but they also have mechanical effects. So values are free-form. There's not a list of values, although there are example values that are provided if you're having trouble coming up with something. But basically, they're statements about your character that are, as far as your character is concerned, core to that character's identity. And you can either invoke or challenge them. Mm-hmm. So when you invoke them, it's something like, oh, hey, this is something that, because my character has a value in this, I would be very motivated to do a good job at whatever it is I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And so you spend a point of what's called determination. You get 1 determination at the start of every episode. It goes away you get 1 at the beginning of every episode. It goes away at the end of every episode, so you can't bank them or anything.
Yeah.
But the normal way to spend determination, and there are a few others, but this isn't a deep dive into the whole system. The normal way to spend it is you spend it, and 1 of your dice counts as having rolled a 1, and in this system, lower is better. Mm-hmm. And in fact, 1 always counts as 2 successes. It's a critical success. So it is, in fact, better. And then that point of determination goes away, and you have invoked that value. If you challenge it, what that means is you're going to take some kind of suboptimal course of action as a result of feeling like maybe something you've encountered has made you rethink a value.
Yeah, so like, for example, let's do like one of Gloriana's values is that like diplomacy is the first and last line of defense. So if so something that would challenge that would be like some sort of situation where diplomacy failed, right? And it was never gonna work.
Or maybe she's just angry enough to not care anymore, and now she just goes and does a violence thing.
Or goes and does a violence thing. Yeah, that would certainly be acting like contrary to that value.
Right. So what could happen in that case is you could gain an extra point of determination. You scratch out or line through that value, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
So you then do whatever it was that you were going to do that is not in line with that value, and usually is suboptimal.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the session, one of the things you can do is you can change that value to reflect your new understanding of that aspect of your character that your character has gained as a result of challenging that value. So values are, in fact, very, very important, and you should think hard about them. And they're not always easy to phrase, so collaborate with your GM or other players to come up with a phrasing that fits on a line and is reasonably unambiguous.
One of the things I like about the values is this is something I like about the system of Daggerheart, like Critical Role's new system. Because Daggerheart has like phrases that you can like invoke that are supposed to represent basically kind of the same idea. It's kind of like it's a value, but these more come from like important character development moments. And so like if I was playing a wizard in Daggerheart, one of my phrases is always going to be my books. And you can like invoke that phrase to gain a mechanical benefit. To be like I need to run in and save my books, or like defense, I'm going to use my books as a shield. My books. And one of the things I like about that is for folks who like really like the narrative and more like actor-y theater kid feel of a game. So who like that, but it gives you it. So okay, I like this because it gives you a mechanical benefit for character development, right? And a mechanical reason to have values and for your character to feel more fleshed out. And to so like I'm making choices according to Gloriana's values. So like it didn't come up because I wasn't first action initiative, but like didn't like it. She didn't like it in that first game when we immediately responded with violence, right? That wasn't her. Listen, we were actively under attack. It was a threat, right? But that's still not her first instinct. And so I'm excited to see where that comes because Tack is going to respond with like, he's the security officer. He's going to respond with like violence and decisive action.
He's the Klingon security officer.
Yeah, he's the Klingon ex-Borg security officer.
Right.
And so there's so much space there for differences in values to cause interesting character and story moments. And so I do like systems that have something like this, where it kind of helps you think through the terrible phrase of it's what my character would do,
Yes.
But in a good way, right? So I like the values. I like the values a lot.
Yeah, the values are a really good. They're a really good way to focus the role playing in a way that even people who aren't big on role playing will still get, because it's like, okay, yeah, but you get a mechanical advantage for role playing your character the way that you design your character.
And it also, again, it gives you some, I would call it like scaffolding to help you role play your character.
Oh yeah.
Because TTRPG sessions, you are not in character for 2 hours, 4 hours, right? You're not. Nobody can do that. You're not in character all the time. but these are some really nice like touchstones or guideposts that are built into the mechanic system to help you like know what your character would do. I think it's a little bit like what to some degree alignment helps some people do like in D&D,
Yeah.
but it's like a better version of that.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not as value laden, right? Because you're not saying I'm evil. Like, oh, okay,
what does that even mean? Yeah,
right. And that's the other thing is like it's not always clear in Dungeons and Dragons what evil and good and even lawful and chaotic mean in a given situation. Whereas these being free form, they're less likely to. So they're not going to be as informative in every single situation.
Right.
But when they are, they're going to be very informative in terms of your character motivations.
Also, something that's important is that while they're free form, I, the player, know exactly what they mean.
Right.
Whereas you and I can have different ideas of what lawful evil means.
Yeah, but what matters to Gloriana is what Maddie thinks curiosity is the mother of invention means. Doesn't matter what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, so. I might have to explain it in the moment to be why, like, this is why I want to spend my point of determination on it. But, like, yeah, I know what these things mean. I also just realized that this is an old version of her character sheet. Those are not my talents.
Doesn't matter much.
But
it doesn't matter much.
Yeah, not for this.
So the next thing I want to talk about are focuses. Focuses are also free form. And if you're... they should be something that comes up but doesn't come up for every single role. Like, if your focus is being a Starfleet officer, that's too broad.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it should be something that actually will have a chance of coming up. So, like, if your focus is like, oh, my focus is the Hounds of the Baskervilles. Like, okay, that's maybe too narrow. Maybe detective fiction might be a better option for you than just one short story from Arthur Conan Doyle.
Earth literature,
Yeah, like
ancient Earth literature.
Right. So, but what they do mechanically is if your focus is something that would help you with the current role. So, for instance, Gloriana has computers. So if she's working to repair a computer or to try to figure out how to access an alien computer written in an unfamiliar programming language with a unfamiliar, unintuitive UI or something, this would count. And so what it does is when you take that roll, normally a roll of a 1 counts as 2 successes. If your focus applies, anything equal to or below the discipline that you used will count as 2 successes. So for instance...
Okay, can I do the example? See if I know it?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So let's say we're doing computers, and that is going to be a like control engineering role. I have a 5 in engineering, so a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. If I roll any of those numbers, that counts as 2 successes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And it's as simple as that. So talents, like I said, are a lot like feats in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So they generally allow you to do something that isn't just, that isn't covered by any of the other things that we've covered. So, for instance, sometimes they'll say, oh, hey, if you spend a threat to perform an action, you get to do this extra thing on top of that. So that would be for example, if your character is a big risk taker, you might take a talent like that. Another one might be like, you get an extra D20 when rolling emergency repairs or taking like the emergency repair action in combat or something, right?
Yeah. Well, like maintenance specialist for Gloriana is it auto lowers the difficulty of like engineering maintenance roles. Which I thought was good for her because, again, she's not super daring, but the way she's a good engineer is that she's specifically not Scotty, right? She's not jury rigging everything. Everything is perfectly maintained.
Exactly.
Right? And so that maintenance specialist made sense. So we're very good at that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Some other examples are like personal effects. allows you to just always have access to a particular item that your character normally wouldn't have automatic access to. So, for instance, our first officer, Commander Va,
Hi, Jason.
has
Jordan. Sorry, God.
Has personal effects that are basically 2 different Klingon weapons that she just carries with her.
Beautiful.
So like that's another thing, and there's a whole lot of them. I actually, for my campaign, I collected all the talents I could find between all the books I own for the system, and dumped all of them into a giant campaign Bible that is itself like 90 pages long, but that no one should ever read more than like 4 or 5 pages of, because most of it is just character creation rules that you don't need to read.
Yeah, well, by the way, that document was super helpful, and that's why my talents are different on this sheet than in Roll20, because I did this on the online character creator.
Got it.
And your document was way easier to search for all the different talents.
Oh, good.
And to actually find okay, here's all of the engineering talents that she can have. And I mostly took engineering talents because she's the chief engineer. She should be good at it.
One thing I do want to point out is you are not restricted by what your role or your best discipline is in terms of which talents you pick.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a security talent and you're the chief engineer, that's fine. Go for it. As long as you meet the prerequisite, which is usually going to be, some score or above in security. So if you have like security 2 and you want to take a security talent that requires security 2+, go for it. Have fun.
Yeah.
The categories are really there primarily to help you understand where you want to look first for your character. Because generally, if you are the ship's engineer, you want some engineering talents. Yeah. And if you're the ship's doctor, you might want some medicine talents, stuff like that.
So Reasoned It Out is he's the XO, but has all security talents.
Yeah. The XO for this game is a bit of a bruiser.
Yeah. Well, and I like when I do character creation, I like min-maxing for character reasons.
Yeah.
So I deeply enjoy I like being really good at something specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Gloriana is really good at engineering. And I also put a lot in con because she should be really good at ship stuff, right?
Yeah, no, makes sense.
But I also enjoy making characters bad at things, right?
Like medicine.
Like medicine
or
and
fighting.
Security and fitness, right? Because I find a lot of fun in failure in TTRPG stuff. And so it's the reason that but if I was going to build more of a well-rounded character, right? Then absolutely I would have pulled a lot of different talents. And my focuses would have been different too. Almost all of her focuses are really, really engineering. I just also put diplomacy because she's a telepath, right? And diplomacy and observation are in there for that. She wants to sort of take care of her team. And if you don't know what's wrong with your team, then you can't take care of them. So you need to be observant.
One thing, if you are a big Star Trek nerd, basically any humanoid species you've heard of from Star Trek, as well as a few of the non-humanoid species that could reasonably fit in a starship, probably a character option.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away by all of the character options.
Now they're scattered across a bunch of books, so there is that, but it's probably something you can find out there. You want to be a Klingon? Fine. You want to be a Betazoid? Fine. You want to be a Bolian? Fine. You want to be a freaking whale? We have a whale on our team. A literal beluga whale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... And I was thinking about this today because D&D is intentionally moving away from species specific bonuses, right?
Which I have mixed feelings about.
I have mixed feelings about. I get the point of so like this even shows up in Pathfinder. My last Pathfinder character I built is a Leshy, which is a plant, a living, walking, sentient plant. And they have a species negative, not bonus, detriment to
Penalty?
penalty. Thank you. They have a species penalty to intelligence. And that, like, that one, I was like, but I wanted to make a Leshy wizard.
Still can.
I still can. I ended up making her a sorcerer with a she knew all wizard spells with an arcane bloodline thing. Because she was a awakened houseplant. She was a wizard's desk cactus, and she soaked up enough magic that she came alive and knew some spells.
Nice.
And she was great. But so like I get the idea of there, you know, because like of there, you know, like there's nothing wrong with a Leshy wizard. There's nothing wrong with a orc, you know, sorcerer or something like that. And so I do, but sometimes taking away those things, taking away the specific bonuses or like penalties makes playing a different species like, well, then what's special about it, right? I think a lot of, at least in D&D races to some degree, a lot of the like what makes this species them is in their like attributes.
Well, maybe we can talk about what species gets you in Star Trek Adventures.
Yes, that's what I was coming to. It just took me a long time to get there.
Okay. So each species comes with a few things. Every species comes with at least one and usually two talents that are only selectable by them, or if you have like very special permission from your GM.
Mm-hmm.
And so some species are required to take one or the other, or just one of them at some point during character creation. Like, it's not an option. You have to take one.
I had to take either telepathy or empathy.
Right. And Klingon characters have to take a talent called Brock Lull, which is what gives them their resistance of 2 against non-lethal damage.
Gotcha.
Which, by the way, is most of the damage in the game. The GM has to spend threat in order to deal lethal damage. Which means, hey, if you ever get me out of threat, I literally can't actually kill you.
There you go.
But also you get 3 bonus points to attributes. Usually it's, I don't know of any instances where it's not 3 different attributes that all get +1. Humans are a bit weird because humans are always weird for these things because, you know, TTRPG tropes. Humans get +1, 2, 3 attributes of their choice instead of 3 set ones.
Gotcha.
But then on top of that, you also get a species trait, which gives you some background information. It says like, oh, you're a Bolian, and here's what that means to be a Bolian, or something like that. So that's where it'll tell you that like, oh, you know, you can digest food that other humanoids would find toxic, and your bodily fluids are generally caustic. Okay, cool. Well, now I know that that's the thing about Bolians.
Yeah.
Those things don't come up much in play, but they certainly can. Usually, the way it comes up the most is sometimes there will be an effect that says only affects characters with this trait. So there might be a plague, and the plague might say like only affects Vulcans and Romulans, right? Because it's a plague that just doesn't affect other species, and because they're related, they both can get infected. Okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Or there might be a door that says like it only opens for characters with the Cardassian trait. So if you're not a Cardassian, you can't pass the biometric lock unless, of course, you can hack that system somehow with maybe a really good engineering or something roll.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe a medicine roll to mask your biosignatures to make it look like you're a Cardassian. There's options. There's always options. But there's also, when it comes to like fluff stuff, usually every species description comes with some names that are example names that you can either just draw from, or you can use them to inspire you, like phonetically. Like, okay, I kind of get what the phonetic pattern is of this species' typical name, so I'll just come up with a name that fits that kind of basic pattern.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. It's pretty freeform. Stuff like mind melds and stuff like that, stuff that's really like more powerful than just, oh, my waste is slightly caustic, so I need a special toilet. Stuff that's more powerful than that usually ends up in a species talent. So, for instance, if your Vulcan character wants to mind meld, well, you better take the mind meld talent.
Yeah. My long-winded way earlier, what I was trying to say is that I think Star Trek does a good job of making your choice of species feel like it matters. Without it feeling like I can't make a Klingon captain, I can't make a Klingon doctor or something like that.
You absolutely can. In fact, one of the roles in the Klingon rulebook is, in fact, Hakwit, which means surgeon.
Ooh.
And it is, in fact, one of the roles for Klingon characters on a Klingon ship. It is also one of the less prestigious roles that you can have on the ship.
Oh,
it's right above janitor.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, team, I need to take a quick bio break, so I'm going to go ahead and put us on a little break, and we will be back in just a second. Let me do. I have a thing.
Hey, I guess we're back.
Nice. I guess we're back. I realize I don't know in StreamYard how to like have that playing, but where you and I can talk to each other.
I don't know how to do that, so
yeah. That was
So let's see. We've gone over species, talents, values, focuses, attributes, disciplines. So reputation. There are 2 reputation systems in the game. There is the one that is the default one from the Star Trek Adventures core rulebook. I actually recommend the one from the Klingon Core rulebook more. It is so the problem with the original one, right, is that basically you almost never go down in reputation, and your reputation very quickly hits the maximum score, and then just kind of sits there, and there's not a whole lot to do with it.
Okay.
On the other hand, the one from the Klingon rulebook, which, by the way, you can get a free PDF that will show you how to directly port that over to a Starfleet game right from Modiphius. Like, they're very open about, like, oh, hey, if you want to use the Klingon version of this adapted for Starfleet, here you go. Here are the rules. It's a little bit more useful in-game. It's not quite so easy for you to increase in your reputation. You have to be pretty intentional about it, and there's a lot of other really good things you can do with what points you get during your reputation stuff. But what happens is, after each session, or after each mission, if you didn't complete a mission, there are a series of questions that generally the GM will ask you, or if you're doing it on your own, if your GM trusts you to, which, I mean, I do trust my players to do it, you can ask yourself. And basically there are things like, was your mission a success? Did anyone die? Did you violate the Prime Directive? Did you take unnecessary risks? And answering yes will in some cases give you positive scores and sometimes negative scores. And basically, too many negative scores, you might have your reputation go down, or you might get demoted, or something bad might happen. And if it goes up, people will start recognizing you. You can start using your reputation score for certain roles. So this is the updated one that we're using in the game, not the original one. So for instance, if you have good reason to think that your reputation would actually be useful for your character, right? Like, you would do better if people know who you are as a result of this, whatever. You can opt to, instead of using the normal discipline, instead use your reputation.
Ooh, okay.
Right. So, like, let's say, I don't know, you really want to move your ship up in the repair queue at Starbase, right?
Yeah.
And so, really, the guy who's in charge of the schedule, he's going by, like, which ship actually needs repairs the most. And so convincing him would normally be an engineering check. But let's say it's the captain who's trying to do this, and the captain's engineering discipline isn't super great. But maybe the captain has a 4 for reputation. And so the captain will say, well, look, do you know who I am? I'm Captain so-and-so of the USS What's-Its-Face.
Yeah.
Like, I think we can move this along. And so then they can take, like, maybe a presence, and instead of engineering, a presence reputation check. You can also do things like you can gain favor with certain NPCs. So maybe at the end of that adventure, you decide, you know what, it would be really good if in the future that particular, like, chief of, repair bay operations likes me.
Yeah.
So maybe you can pay a couple points that you earn from your reputation to gain influence with that character. So the next time you talk to them, they'll be more inclined to help you automatically.
Nice.
So, the original system, I don't recommend it. It's not terribly good. Which is one of the things is, while I do really like the system, there are some flaws with it. It's not a perfect system. That's one of the original flaws that I had, or problems that I had with it, was that system is just not very good. We use it for Star Trek Lexington, which was the first season that we did that ties into this game that we're playing now. And I don't think anyone actually liked it. I think everyone was just like, all right, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I was actually, while you've been talking, I've been trying to make a plot in my head of Tom Paris's reputation.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah, that was just all over the place.
And look, here's the other thing. Sometimes it's fun to have your character's reputation go down, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and it makes your reputation go down. And, like, that happens. It's okay. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Unless your reputation is like 0 and you're being court-martialed, chances are you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, and then you get to have a courtroom drama episode, and all the Star Trek nerds rejoice.
I'm so happy that there was a courtroom episode in season 1 of Strange New Worlds.
Right? It's like it's in like the first couple episodes.
I know. I was like, finally, a show that feels like Star Trek.
Yeah.
We get dry courtroom drama.
Yay!
My favorite. So yeah, like
reflections on the nature of humanity.
Right, like genetic engineering and all sorts of cool stuff like that.
Moral problems that we're gonna sit down and talk about for an hour.
I think what's the next thing we should probably talk about? Maybe so character advancement is it's a little odd in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic assumption of this game is that you guys are playing as like very competent, reasonably rounded Starfleet officers. And if you think about say Captain Picard from from Encounter at Farpoint versus Captain Picard from say like, I don't know, All Good Things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely not exactly the same character, right? He's gone through a lot. He's grown as a character. But from a standpoint of like game mechanics, is he really that much more competent or powerful or good at fighting or anything? Not really, no. Yeah. And so this game makes a similar assumption, right? You are starting out at kind of like the top of your field for most characters. A little bit less for junior officers, but still, even as a junior officer, you're highly competent. You know what you're doing. You're well-trained, disciplined, all that stuff. So most of what happens in character development is more of a lateral movement than a strict upgrade. So what happens is when you do things like use a point of determination for to invoke or challenge a value, you get a spotlight. And there are other ways you can get a spotlight too. But basically what they usually let you do is increase one thing, like one discipline by 1 and decrease another by 1, or increase an attribute by 1 and decrease it another one by 1.
Okay.
So that can help you specialize your character, which can certainly make you feel more powerful if you're doing some min-maxy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing is that the default character creation stuff is not going to give you like a lot of back scores and a lot of minimum scores.
Yeah.
So if that's the kind of thing you're after, then that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I could be worse at science.
Right, I guess. And you could be better at con.
Yeah.
So if that's the thing that you wanted to do, yeah.
Will it take anything over 5?
No, you cannot go past 5 in disciplines or past 12 in attributes. That's the max score.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are things called arc milestones. And so these happen after a certain number of what are called spotlight milestones. Basically, at the end of the game or episode or whatever, the game master may call for a spotlight. Now, exactly how you distribute spotlights is up to the game master. Things to consider include things like how fast you want characters to advance. Did you design this episode as a spotlight for a specific character? And if you're going to do that, you need to rotate who's getting spotlights, by the way.
Yeah.
But things like that. And what I usually do is after basically every episode, I ask my players who they think deserves the spotlight. And after a certain number of spotlights, you get what's called an arc milestone. And when you get those, you can, in fact, just increase something.
Beautiful.
You can say, hey, I just want to increase my fitness by 1. That's it. I'm not decreasing anything. I'm just going to have an extra point.
Yeah.
How long it takes to get those goes up. So the first one, you get your first arc milestone after, I think, 2 spotlight milestones, and it's like 3 and then 4, and it keeps going. Which does mean that over the course of a campaign, if you're rotating those spotlights reasonably well, most characters are going to have trouble getting past like maybe 3 or 4 arc milestones. So by the end of your campaign, you shouldn't count on having Superman. You're not going to, but you also start out pretty competent. So, you know. What else? You want to go over combat?
Let's see. Oh, I actually wanted to take a second to talk about one of my favorite mechanics of this game, which is how you can for a player, you can just start playing as an NPC if your main character is like incapacitated or just not in that scene.
Yeah, the supporting character mechanism. It's actually one of my favorite mechanisms in the game. It's actually one of my favorite mechanisms in any game, although I recognize the degree to which it does not translate to all genres.
Right.
So basically, anytime that there isn't a really good reason for you to use your main character, or there's a really good reason for your main character to not be available, like maybe they've been captured by Romulans, or maybe they just came down with like the Denebian flu or whatever. I don't know. Just make up your own nonsense. You can bring up a supporting character. And so you have 2 options, really. You can create a new supporting character, or you can bring back a supporting character who's already been used in a previous episode. So to do this, it does require some of what's called crew support, which is a statistic that your ship has, which represents basically how big a crew you have. So bigger ships will tend to have bigger crews, and you'll be able to do this more often. But it gets reset at every episode. So, like, you know, even if your scale is like scale 3 and you only have 3 crew support, you can still do it 3 times an episode, which is more than you normally will need to.
Yeah.
And so if you do a new character, what happens is you go through a much simplified version of the character creation rules, which will give you a less powerful character, like mechanically, but still, because you're designing this character for a specific purpose in that particular scene, they're usually going to be an asset for that purpose in that scene. And so you can say, oh, like remember that time when Kirk finds the ancient space sleeper ship from the 90s? And he's like, don't we have that 20th century historian on board? Like, of course we do.
Yes.
Of course we do. Yeah, we've got a 20th century. She might fall in love with Space Hitler, but we've got her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, right? It's like, yeah, of course we have a 20th century space historian. Who cares? And so you bring up the 20th century space historian, and you say, like, okay, so this person's got, like, you know, they're good at, like, reasoning, and they're good at insight, and they've got a focus in 20th century military history and whatever, right? There you go.
Yeah.
If you bring them back, they can get basically every time you bring them back up until a certain point, you can give them a new focus or a new value or a new talent, or you could increase an attribute or increase a discipline by 1.
Nice. Which, by the way, Evil Ginger Miniatures tells us that so character creation was like the thing their players whined about when they ran this game.
Really?
And to me, or character advancement, I said creation, I think.
To me,
it's almost like if you need to scratch that itch, keep bringing back a supporting character.
Yeah, because they can advance pretty quickly. Now, the thing is, once they're done with all the advancements, they're going to be almost as good as a PC.
Mm-hmm.
Or a main character, I should say, because they are technically player characters, because they are generally controlled by the player.
Yeah.
Or a player. And also, you don't get to own them. They're a group resource.
Yeah. So
if someone else wants to call back that 20th century historian and play them this time, even though you played them last time, that's fine. And so it really is a fun mechanic. I don't know. I really encourage people to play around with it if you're playing Star Trek Adventures, or to just steal it if you're playing a different sci-fi game that involves like spaceships with crews that are bigger than the number of players you have. So like, yeah, it's a really good mechanic.
I also think this is a mechanic that helps this game feel like Star Trek.
Oh,
because I remember when you were telling me about that the first time, I was like, oh, okay, so this is how you get Miles O'Brien, and this is how you
Right.
get Ensign Rowe.
Yep. Or Barkley, or even like Yeoman Rand, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Nurse Chapel.
Yeah.
Other examples of supporting characters. Ensign Riley, since now I'm on a TOS kick this minute.
Yeah.
That guy who gets fake drunk and starts singing Irish drinking songs while messing with the controls and engineering.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that episode. Yes.
It's a great episode.
Yeah. Well, and that also opens up to if you have a lot of these characters, a very fun session could be a lower deck session.
Which we did,
In Voyager, they do this one as it's something Wolf or something. But Janeway, there's like 3 people who have never gone on an away mission, and they're like 6 years. And she takes all 3 of them, and it's a disaster.
Right.
And then there is the.
I mean, there's
I think
the
it's
episode
called
Lower
Junior
Decks.
Officers on TNG.
No, the episode is called Lower Decks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, where we follow primarily a bunch of ensigns on their day of doing stuff on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And we did an episode like that in Lexington, where we actually had all of the player characters. We sent their main characters off to do something else.
Yeah.
And we had all supporting characters. Some of them were new, some of them were returning. And yeah, we just had fun with our supporting characters for the day.
Yeah,
and you'll get attached to them. Like in Lexington, my crew got really attached to our Vulcan helmsman, Ensign Talk, who later became Lieutenant JG Talk because they decided that they liked him enough to promote him.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we had a whole promotion ceremony for a random ass Vulcan we made up on the spot because we needed someone to fly a shuttle.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and like, this is a TTRPG, right? Your players are gonna find a pet. You know what I mean? They're gonna adopt someone. What a great way to make that person useful narratively.
He's also the only supporting character that survived the final episode. Spoilers.
Whoa. I have not watched all of Lexington.
Spoiled. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I need to watch it. But that's awesome.
Yes. It's a really good mechanic. And it's actually not in all of the 2D20 games. Like, I don't think the really? Dishonored game has it. The Doom game has a mechanic that functions similarly, but it's not actually the same mechanic. So I think it is in the T20 games 2D20 games I've played. I think it's technically unique to this one.
I think this is a mechanic that is going to be fun in any game like that feels like a Mystery of the Week TV show, right?
Yeah, I think that can be reasonable.
Right, because it's so okay, because part of the problem that the supporting character solves, right, and part of the fun they bring in is in TV shows, right, you're supposed to start and end at the same place, right? The state of the characters should be roughly the same at the beginning and the end of
minus big character episodes, yeah. And so because that's just what writing for TV looks like, right?
And so your main characters one, if the point of that episode is there's something bad that's happening to this main character, and that takes them out of the episode, then that's zero fun for that player, right?
Unless they're absent that day.
Right, unless they're absent that day. Yeah. And so that does solve that problem. So you can tell that type of story, right? and still have fun. And also in like TV shows, we have supporting characters that we love and adore, such as NCIS Penelope's boyfriend, who is Xander from Buffy, right? Played by the same actor. Sorry, that's Criminal Minds, not NCIS. I mixed my cop shows. But yeah, sorry, that was a tangent of mine on like storytelling, and I was trying to think like the genre that works for, because it doesn't work as well for like D&D.
No.
Yeah, but especially in a system where like you're not super more competent than the average person. You can be a little more competent, but you're a demigod by the end.
Yeah, basically. And that's basically the Star Trek idea, is like, when I say like, yeah, you're all going to be very competent, well-rounded individuals, but you're still going to be people. You're not going to play Q. Right? Like that's
right. Yeah, you're not going to be Q.
I mean, I guess if that's the game you do want to play and you can get a GM to figure out how to run a game where the players are Q, good, have fun with it, but it's certainly not the game I'm going to play.
Yeah. Okay, so the other main thing I do, like, I don't really want to go through the like mechanics of combat, because it's not particularly unique in my brain.
It's not. I mean, it's alternating what do you call it, initiative. So one side goes, then one side activates one character, the other side activates another character. Starship combat is similar, actually. Yeah. You're not actually activating the starships technically. You're activating people at consoles on the bridge who then perform actions that the ship responds to, which I will say, actually, there have been a lot of games that have attempted to do things like multi-person crewed vehicles in combat in a way that still feels fun, and I think that they usually fail.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that one of my biggest complaints about the Power Rangers TTRPG, which Maddie was in, was that the Zord rules are absolutely horrible. It got to the point where we basically just used them as vehicles to get from one place to another and just didn't ever fight in them because it wasn't fun. It was less fun to form the Megazord than it was to fight with them individually. It was also less effective, which is weird. But I will say Star Trek Adventures manages to have a system where everyone can feel important. Even if you're just the captain giving orders, you can do it in ways that actually materially change the outcome of the battle in a way that just saying, hey, fire phasers without any mechanical advantage just wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So you can do things like you can go on the ship-wide intercom and give a rousing speech to generate more momentum so you can improve your rolls later. You can do things like let someone act out of turn by giving them a specific order so that it's not actually part of their normal activation sequence, but they get to go do a thing anyway. If you're the engineer, you can sit there and do things like try to recharge your shields or bring power back up or things like that, right? Make repairs on the fly. In addition, there's obviously the guy who can do things like fly the ship or fire the photon torpedoes.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, like, it is one of the few times where I've ever seen a TTRPG especially where vehicle combat with multi-person crews actually works.
That's great.
Frankly kind of amazing, honestly.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I've always I've only done one ship-to-ship combat in a Star Trek game, but it was certainly fun.
We do a few in Lexington. We don't do a whole lot because just like in regular Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
The goal is not to go fight people. In fact, if there is a session where the GM has planned out combat encounters, but you can turn them into social conflicts and negotiations, that's a good thing in this game.
Yeah.
That is explicitly encouraged by the reputation rules.
Yeah. But yeah, the ship-to-ship stuff is fun. I did, especially when the rocks fall on your head. I did want to just briefly go over, like, stress and injuries, because there's not you don't just have hit points.
It's true, yeah. So your stress is similar to your hit points in that when you take damage, it's the thing that you're accounting for.
Mm-hmm.
The game defaults to counting up stress, but if you count down, it's mathematically the same. So I don't care if my players go up or down on their stress, as long as they're consistent about it within at least a combat.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, oh, I gotta go up and then down and up, it like, no, it's either up or down, buddy. Gotta pick.
Yeah.
So the way that injuries work is basically if you are ever reduced to 0 stress, you take an injury. If you ever suffer 5 or more stress in a go from one attack or one source, you take an injury. And if you are if you take damage while you are injured at 0, if you take another damage at 0 stress,
okay,
you take another injury. And if you are injured normally, it's not normally fatal, but it can take you out of the combat. And if you are already injured and you take a second injury, that does tend to be fatal.
Okay.
So injuries.
Yeah. That also feels very Star Trek, right? Because you don't. Main characters do on occasion die, but it's not common.
No.
But main characters getting incapacitated is pretty common.
Right. And so if you're injured, generally speaking, you're out of the combat unless someone can patch you up in combat, at which point you can stand back up with like a stress.
Yeah.
A point of stress. And generally speaking, most injuries will result in some penalty that you're going to take for at least the rest of the scene. And if you're in a situation where like medical attention isn't realistically a possibility, it might be until a scene where you can get medical attention.
Yeah.
So in our last session, which was our first session of Star Trek Endurance, the captain tried to leap across a ravine.
Yeah.
And while technically she made it across, she had a rough landing and sprained her ankle. And as a result, had a penalty on future checks for basically the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to point out is failing a roll in this game often ends up with success but rather than just outright failure.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's like, okay, you're not going to fail to jump across the ravine if you try, but if you fail, it won't be very good. It'll suck a bit. Like you'll get a sprained ankle or I think Maddie, your character failed to cross the log bridge.
I did. I failed to walk across a log.
It's true. So then you fell onto the log and winded yourself. It took some stress that you couldn't heal.
Yeah.
And then we continued on. And it wasn't a huge deal, but like still it would have been nicer for your character to have passed that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things that like by in and of itself not a big deal, but would have made if some of our combat rolls had gone poorly later, right? I was then more likely to be taken out. But
right. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean you never fail when you fail a roll, right? Like sometimes it will just be like a fail, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes as the GM, I'm okay with you guys failing to accomplish a certain task. So if it's like, oh, hey, we need to search this junkyard, and the junkyard guy doesn't really want to let you unless you give him something valuable, and you fail that negotiation, well, now you just have to pay up. Deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times it's going to be a success with costs, right? So on a failed roll.
Yeah.
And that's not so much a hard and fast rule as it is like something the game encourages GMs to do. Because one of the things is, in Star Trek, people don't often completely fail at tasks. Right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes they do, but a lot of times they get it done, but it's not as easy as everyone was anticipating or something like that, right? So that's another way in which it can help you feel like Star Trek. And also, while failure can be fun, failure in a way that basically means that the mission is just no longer a success is not as much fun.
Yeah. Not all failure is fun. Right. Even if some is. Like, I thought it was fun and absolutely correct when Gloriana slipped in her go-go
exactly.
And, yeah.
But if instead what had happened was like, oh no, the runabout is destroyed and now you guys never get to play the rest of the campaign, that wouldn't be fun.
That's not fun.
No.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of fun. That's like, oh, I guess we're all going home now.
I guess we go home. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, how is this game? How is running this game specifically, and like, how much is there enough like support for prep? Are you having to do a lot just like from scratch?
So, okay, first I want to say you should not base your prep expectations on me.
Ah, okay.
All right, so I am a weird extra guy who does things like makes full CGI teaser trailers for the next game session for every single freaking episode.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, okay, I'm a weirdo, but I will say this: already have a 48 episode, 4-season arc planned out
Okay.
with every episode planned. None of them are completely original to me.
Okay.
So I was able to very easily cobble together 48 missions, none of which I had to come up with completely on my own. Now, they do range in how much is done for me. So basically, this game, when it comes to pre-written missions, has two types, right? The one that you're more familiar with is just going to be an adventure that's just already pre-written out. It's got different scenes. It's got different acts set out for you. It's got the difficulty of different roles already established. It's got NPCs all statted out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did last night. And so what we're going to be doing, I think, for the next 2 sessions. But there are also mission briefs, which are basically a single page, and they give you the story beats. They give you the name and like purpose and background for some NPCs who are important to the thing, but they do not give you like full sets of like, okay, this task requires this role with this difficulty, and this, these are the scenes that you're going to run, and this is the exact consequence for everything. But it does give you enough that you can come up with like a nice 3-act structure for an episode, and you'll have to fill out, the exact details, but you also didn't have to come up with it all on your own. So yeah, there's a variety in there, and also in terms of actually making up an entire scenario, which I have also done for this game several times. In fact, the one shot that we did, Maddie, where it wasn't live, but if you remember, Kip was there.
Yeah,
that one was I just made that up.
That was where we were Klingons, right?
Yep, you were Klingons.
Oh, that was so much fun. I was having such a bad day, and I got to solve problems with violence, pretend violence. It was great. It was
sometimes pretend violence is the answer to your problems.
Yeah, sometimes it's really cathartic to be a Klingon and solve your problems with a bat laugh.
Yeah. So because the story is the game is sort of designed to go according to scenes and have sort of a TV show like structure. The way I do it is I come up with, okay, what's my basic conflict? Who wants what from whom and why? And then once I have that, what I then try to do is come up with usually three acts, where I say, okay, this is the main thing that happens in this act, like arrival and investigation. And then like maybe the next act will be like, oh no, the Klingons show up as a rival team.
Complication.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And then the final act is going to be like the final confrontation and any revelations that need to happen. And then within that, I'll break it out and say, okay, I need between 2 and 4 scenes per act. And I'll break those down. And I don't always go to the point of saying like exactly which roles with what difficulty. A lot of times I'll do that a bit on the fly. But generally speaking, if you're familiar with how to write, or if you're familiar with the structure of, say, a episodic TV show, you should be able to come up with a pretty good mission outline. I don't know, a couple hours if you're pretty good at it, maybe a little bit more if you're not.
Gotcha. I would say I like that. I haven't seen pre-written stuff as like that mission brief. I think I would like that a lot better than a fully pre-written adventure. Because I usually read fully pre-written adventures and then immediately I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Change this, change this, change this. Right. And I effectively use them as mission briefs. And so if you're like, here's like the meat and potatoes, or not the meat and potatoes, here's the menu, right? Go nuts from there. I think my GM style, I would actually like that better. It does require more prep, but
Yeah.
I've never run a pre-written adventure as written. I
I've
can't
come
do it.
close.
Incapable.
I don't know if I've ever actually completely done it. One thing that is a little tricky is the pre-written adventures that I'm using mostly assume a date that is about 15 years earlier or so than we're actually playing.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that certain things are different. So, for instance, the game, the default setting for the game is basically the later seasons of Deep Space Nine. So, the Dominion War is either coming, or it's in the works, or it's on open hostilities now. And so, like some of the pre-written adventures that I am either altering or not using include things like, okay, well, what happens when the Klingons pull out of the Khitomer Accords? And what do you do if you're on a joint Federation Klingon starbase? Which is a cool adventure.
Yeah.
But I'm specifically setting my game slightly about a year after Voyager comes home.
Gotcha.
Partially just to give people options like the actual ship we're using. Because, quite frankly, I'm a little bit tired of the relative stagnation of the Star Trek timeline, which is just like, we got to like the destruction of Romulus, and then everything came to a giant screeching halt for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it was like, what if we went backwards? What if we went backwards again? What if we went backwards? It's like, okay, guys, could we go a little bit forwards? No? Okay. It got to be like Warhammer 40,000, where they were like, hey, guys, we got to like the year 999 in the 41st millennium. We don't want to make it 41K. What do we do? And the answer was just like, what if we just never move the storyline forward ever again for like a decade? I was like, okay, thanks.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, we are playing, which to be fair is not the latest time in the Star Trek timeline that we've seen, which I believe is Picard season 3 is that if I guess technically it's Discovery seasons like 3 through whatever. But here's the thing.
Where they're just
I hate
in
Discovery,
the future.
so I don't care. I really, really don't like Discovery, so I just don't care. I do like Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds and season 3 of Picard and Prodigy.
Yeah.
All great stuff. Discovery? No. Don't want anything to do with it.
Here's something that bothers me about Discovery. Listen, that's its own stream. You and I could talk about that for hours. But something in particular that bothers me about Discovery, spoilers for Discovery, is the whole ship didn't have to go to the future, right? Specifically, just Michael had to go to the future. This is established. And the whole ship is just like, nah, we're following you. You know what they didn't do? Give people the option to get off, right? People with like families, loved ones. It's like, no, we all love Michael so much.
She's the main character of the universe.
Yeah,
in so many ways.
I, the captain, or we the crew, just unquestioning. Yeah, we're gonna abandon our whole lives and everyone we love and care about and who loves and cares about us, and just follow her. And we don't even have to have a vote about it.
It's automatic, unanimous. Everyone agrees.
Yeah, everybody agreed. We didn't even have to ask. It's fine. So, and again, they didn't have to, right? It wasn't like an accident. It wasn't in the moment, we have to do this to save the world. Nope, just for solidarity, because they love her.
For some reason, by the way.
For we don't know why.
Also, we have a Irish wake style ceremony when Space Hitler leaves the universe. Because for some reason we've all befriended Space Hitler, like another Space Hitler. Star Trek has a lot of Space Hitlers.
I was about to have to ask you which one, and then I caught up to the conversation.
Right, yeah, Philippa Georgiou. Empress Georgiou. Is she's the Empress of the Terran Empire, which is the mirror universe thing, which that's a whole thing. But yeah, like, I get that she was like helping you guys for a while and she solved the main problem of season 1. But she was also a dictatorial genocidal maniac who ate sapient creatures for dinner just on the regular.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have to have an Irish wake for her when she's gone. Maybe you can just be like, all right, she's gone now. We can all just deal with whatever complicated feelings we have. We don't need to celebrate this with alcohol and telling fun stories about her.
No, we sure don't.
Mm-mm.
Well, and there's not so like. So, here's a similar storyline that's done in Star Trek Voyager. 7 of 9, right? It's like, oh, you were a Borg and now you're not, right? But hey, how we don't trust you. You know what I mean? Like there's character development and we come to love 7, right?
Right. And she also has the excuse that she was under mind control the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't her choice to do all those horrible Borg things.
Sure wasn't.
Whereas when it comes to the Empress, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Also, we kind of ruined the entire point of the Mirror Universe by deciding that Terrans are like biologically hardwired to be more callous and violent than prime timeline humans. Because the entire point, like the thematic point of the Mirror timeline is humans have within them the capability to choose to be horrible, monstrous, evil beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that anyone could fall into, but you can choose to be better. And that's what the Prime timeline did. They chose to be better. And the Mirror Universe chose to be worse. And like, does it make sense to have an entire universe where that's the case? No, of course not.
Oh.
But the point is...
But it's a plot device.
Yeah, it's about human choice. When you say, oh, Terrans are just kind of born evil and also they're born sensitive to light, you're like, oh, okay, great, cool. So I guess they're just naturally evil, which also maybe don't have beings that are just inherently evil, that are just like natural biological organisms. If you want to have demons and monsters or whatever, okay, fine. But like they're people, maybe don't make entire people groups naturally evil, because I don't know. Sounds a whole lot like racism to me.
That's how you get the Mirror Universe.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like, were these writers from the Mirror Universe? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
So
I don't
anyway,
think they can pull off the mustache.
I don't think we need to keep talking about Discovery, though.
We don't need to keep talking about Discovery. One of these days we'll do a drunken rant.
But what I wanted to point out is that there are alternate settings, right? So there are rules that can help you address whether you want to play in the Next Generation era. If you want to do something after that, they started to release rules for like a time frame that's like season 3 of Picard. They have rules for TOS era. They have rules for if you want to play in the Discovery era, like during the Klingon Federation war. There are rules for if you want to play in the Enterprise era with, Captain Scott Bakula.
Yes.
I know it's Captain Archer. It's Jonathan Archer. I get it.
But he's Captain Scott Bakula.
Yeah, he's also Captain Scott Bakula. With a little dog. He's got a little beagle.
With a little Porthos.
Yeah. So yeah, you can do all that. In fact, actually, the first game of Star Trek Adventures that connects into this, what we're doing now, was actually in the Enterprise era, and Maddie was there. So yeah, if you want to see us play in the Enterprise era, there's that.
Yeah, I was a Denobulan for that one.
Yeah, you were. Which is still an option. In fact, there were Denobulans in Prodigy and Lower Decks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Denobulans have definitely been featured again, and also there was Xindi in Prodigy. There were some Xindi reptilians.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I haven't watched all of Prodigy.
Get on that.
I should. I watched the first couple episodes, and I remember thinking, like, this feels more like Star Wars than it does Star Trek. It
does start out feeling more like Star Wars, especially with all the droids that were all over the place.
Yeah.
And everyone not speaking the same language anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there were plot reasons for that, but still it did feel a lot like Star Wars at first. But here's the thing. I'm okay with that, because while I've basically given up on Star Wars as of now, I don't dislike the general vibe of Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't dislike the general vibe of Star Wars. I just I'm not I tend to like Star Trek more.
I do too. I've also given up on Star Wars after the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I haven't kept up on it. And I was the nerd that got mad at the sequel trilogy because it ignored Mara Jade, Justice for Mara. It ignored all of the novels I had spent my childhood reading.
Yeah, that annoyed me, but I got over that. What really annoyed me about the thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back for the sequel trilogy for me was when episode 8 decided to just reset all of Finn's character development and have him go through the exact same arc again, but worse, and in a way that actually had no actual effect on the plot in the end.
Yeah.
Because look, Finn was by far the most interesting character to come out of the episode 7. Like, I know it's supposed to be about Rey, but like, I don't really care about Rey. Whereas the story of like the ex-stormtrooper having to deal with like, you know, not only that he was lied to about what the First Order is about, but also his feelings about having perpetrated all these war crimes, and he doesn't know if he wants to be selfish and get away from all of it, or if he wants to join the resistance and help fight for everything that he once thought was good, but you know, now he's been tricked. Like, that's an interesting character.
Hey,
like, boo-hoo, I'm sad because
we said we were going to stop talking about Philip and Georgiou.
Sorry. Okay, so there are rules for playing in pretty much any era of Star Trek that you would reasonably want to. Also, hey, if you want to do some time travel shenanigans, the game has starship stats for both the ISS and the space shuttle.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're very bad compared to most of the other starships in the game, as you might imagine. But they are there. You can run them as starships in Star Trek Adventures if you want.
Yeah. So, Dapper, I was just teasing you because we were describing Finn's character art as a better Philippa Georgiou character arc.
Yeah, well, for one thing, he wasn't in charge of all that, so he gets more of a pass. He was a brainwashed youth who got like kidnapped by the First Order. But I'm sorry, Finn just was by far the best character, and they just took him and just tossed him in the trash, basically, and I hate that.
Yeah.
And also, John Boyega apparently has been getting, like, apparently it's less now, but like he got some flack for that. And like, guys, the actors didn't make any of these decisions.
Yeah,
do not be angry at the actors.
You can't be angry at the actors for writer decisions. Like, come on.
This was writer, director, producer shenanigans. This was not the actors.
Yeah.
But so Star Trek Adventures. Let's see. Is there anything we haven't super covered that's very important? It can be as episodic or serialized as you want. Is one thing. Like, there's nothing stopping you from doing, you know, a Discovery or Picard style. Every episode is going to lead into the next one. It's clearly designed for a more episodic structure, but so what? Just don't do that.
You do you.
Yeah. Let's see. It's got a lot of different spaceship frames, which is what they call the basic, like, this is what you make your ship from. And those are all the different classes. There's also a bunch of Klingon options if you want to play as Klingons. I know that the second edition has more non-Federation starship frames that you can choose from. But in first edition, there are some, there's at least one Andorian ship. There's at least one Vulcan ship that you can use as a space frame. There's also a whole bunch of Klingon options. You can use a D7. You can use a Kavort class, a Vorcha, a Negvar, like three different birds of prey. There's, I think, a few more that you can do in the Klingons, because, you know, the Klingons have a whole core rulebook, so they have a whole bunch of ship options. Mm-hmm. So one, I guess now is probably a good idea to go through some of the differences that I know about between first and second edition. Because if you go to Modifius right now, the book that they're going to try to sell you primarily is the second edition core rulebook, which is not what we're using.
Right.
So one of the big differences is in the species. So in first edition, all these specific species talents are talents that you actually select out of in-character creation. Mm-hmm. And they come out of that pool. So normally you might be ready to select a talent for your time in, I don't know, like Starfleet Academy. But that's just when you pick a species talent instead. In second edition, they are generally moved to a new thing called species power. And they're automatically acquired. Once you just choose that species, you get the species power.
Okay.
It does not come out of your talents budget. And you just have it. And if you're trying to convert a species from first edition to second edition, generally what you should do is just choose one of the species talents and make it the species power. And that'll do you fine. Also, in first edition, you get 6 focuses. The second edition, at the very end of character creation, has you choose a focus that reflects your character's downtime activity, right? So, like for Commander Riker, you would select jazz, right, or maybe jazz trombone specifically. Whereas maybe for Captain Picard, you might choose the Ressican flute because he did that a lot. Or for Beverly Crusher, you might choose dance because she liked to dance. I don't know. Maybe for Commander Data, you could choose painting or poetry or something because he did both of those things. Or cat, yeah, just cat. Also, the game. So first edition uses 6-sided dice. You can buy special 6-sided dice with special symbols, but you can also just use just a regular D6. But it's not going to just give you a number 1 through 6. The dice have a 1 and a 2, 2 blank faces, and then 2 special effect faces, which are usually like a Star Trek symbol. If you're just using D6s, the way that the book recommends you do it is 1 and 2 are 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are blank, and 5 and 6 are the special effects, which is easy to remember, so you can just use them. Second edition does not use these dice at all. All the purposes for which those dice were used, which is mostly things like damage, and then occasionally randomizing a few other minor things, those are no longer randomized in the second edition. So weapons just deal a certain amount of damage. They just do. And if you get hit by one, you take whatever resistance you have off of that number, and that's just how much you take.
Okay.
I personally like them. I think they're fun. I like rolling them. I like the little symbols.
Yeah.
So I'm not super happy with that decision, but it does streamline it. It is also that idea of not having those dice is becoming the standard for their 2D20 games going forward, as far as I can tell. And I think, because as far as I know, chronologically, this was the first of their 2D20 games.
Okay.
And so for Star Trek Adventures First Edition was sort of like the test bed for 2D20. And they incorporated a lot of new design elements in their later ones, like Dune or Dishonored, or also, I believe, the licensed Blade Runner game is also 2D20.
Nice. I
think. I might be wrong about that, but I know they have other ones. So, yeah, you don't... They got rid of the random, what they call them challenge dice in Star Trek Adventures.
Okay.
So second edition does not have those. Now, those are some of the biggest differences. Also, like I said, the second edition core rulebook makes a much less strong assumption that everyone's going to be playing a Starfleet character on a Starfleet ship. You have more scope for things like civilians on Starfleet ships. Like, you want to be Keiko O'Brien? Okay, well, we're going to support that more. Which, by the way, don't be Keiko O'Brien. Be a nicer Keiko O'Brien.
Yeah.
I mean, Keiko wasn't exactly a horrible person or anything, but there were definitely some times where I'm like, I'm taking Miles' side on this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Keiko. I know you're not feeling great, but you can't get that physical with your husband while you look like you're 10. You just can't.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to be okay with that.
No one's okay with that,
Yeah,
Keiko.
I know it sucks for you, but like, no.
No.
And the fact that your husband isn't super okay with it still doesn't mean that he doesn't love you anymore. That's not what that means. Like, but you gotta... Anyway, complaints about Keiko O'Brien aside, yes, you can play a character more like Keiko. Or if you wanted to do like, oh, we're Ferengi traders making our way through the universe and trying to deal with whatever the heck Rom is doing as Grand Nagus. You can do that.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I can't tell you which edition you should get, because I have not read the core rulebook for second edition.
Okay.
And the reason I'm not switching it is because right now all the books that I have almost all the books for Star Trek Adventures First Edition. Almost all. I think I'm missing 4 maybe, which still means I have like 7 or 8 books or something crazy like that. And because all the mission briefings and whatnot are in the first edition, I'm sticking with the first edition at least through this campaign.
Nice.
What about a plated simple tailor? Yes, that is something that would be easier to do with the second edition rules. Yeah, because I mean, remember, he's just a plain simple tailor, Garrick.
Plain simple Taylor. Goodness,
Yeah.
I need to stop yawning. My goodness.
The fact that he knows how to fake data crystals and rig them to explode, that's a coincidence. Don't worry about that.
Don't you have hobbies? Come on.
Yeah. And the fact that maybe he's on a first name basis with the former head of the Obsidian Order, also a coincidence. He did that guy's pants.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. But was Tuvix a Starfleet member or not?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know.
I guess Tuvix never took an oath, you know?
True, but Tuvok did, and Tuvix remembers that oath.
That's true.
It's tricky. Luckily, we didn't. Luckily or unluckily for Tuvix, we didn't have to deal with that question for too long.
Yeah.
Rip Tuvix.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like we talked about this recently because I just listened to the playback of your Saturday stream, and you guys talked about Tuvix on there.
Yeah. We didn't actually talk about it, but I did.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything else in particular that I want to mention. We didn't super go over momentum. The most common use for momentum is to just buy you more dice for your dice pool.
Yeah.
So normally it's 2d20, but if you want to roll an extra die, you spend a point of momentum. You generate momentum anytime you get more successes than the difficulty of the check. You can spend it immediately, or you can bank it for later use by yourself or other players. You can bank a maximum of 6 momentum. Once you have 6, any further momentum you generate either is use or lose. You do not need the group's consent to use momentum or to give the DM threat instead of using momentum. However, most groups that I've encountered do tend to try not to step on each other's toes with the momentum, and will ask for advice hey, do you guys think this is worth spending some momentum on? And then people will, no, maybe not, I don't know. Momentum does go down by 1 at the end of every scene, or at least it's supposed to. I'm not always on top of that. So it is one of those things where you should use your momentum. Don't just let it sit there. Also, it comes and goes very easily. Often spending momentum will itself then generate further momentum. Because if you buy yourself 2 extra dice, you might roll more successes than you need simply because you had more dice. And then that brings back some of that momentum. So
have you
threat? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead and talk about threat. I was going to ask
threat can do basically all the same things that momentum does, except it's used by the GM to empower antagonistic NPCs. So, in the last game, the creatures that everyone was fighting were actually pretty bad at fighting, but I had plenty of threat, especially for the first combat. Mm-hmm. So in order to increase their threat, I would spend extra threat on getting extra dice for them so that they could actually, maybe succeed at punching people a little bit.
Yeah.
Or that one time one of them figured out how to fire a phaser.
Yeah, that was wild. I was going to ask you, I know Star Trek, this game actually has a solo play option. Have you looked into the Captain's Log books at all?
Yeah, so I have the Captain's Log book. I have not finished it. I have the red edition. It comes in yellow, blue, and red, which are completely identical in their content, but the covers are different.
But the covers are different.
Right, you got to collect them all.
Yeah.
So I've read through some of that. It is a journaling game. So the idea is supposed to be that you're going to roll up a framework for an adventure, and then you're going to write down what actually happens and make checks. The rules are mostly the same for taking checks. There are some differences in terms of how you generate and how much momentum you can store. I think you can only store 1 momentum, and you generate it in about the same way, though, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I can't speak too much on it because I haven't read through all of it and I haven't tried it yet.
Okay.
There are also there's a GM and a player's guide that are out there as separate books. They do not actually contain any hard, crunchy rules. So if you're looking for new player options or new NPCs to throw at your characters, those are not books that you're going to want. However, they have extensive, deep lore dives into topics that come up in game. So if you're the kind of person who really wants to know the lore that will be relevant to this game, in a way that's set up for use in the game specifically. They are good things to have. I've read both of them. They are fun reads. They can be a little bit redundant if you're already big on Star Trek lore. So if you're like a giant lore nerd, you might not need these, but they really do help out a lot. For instance, they'll give you things like, okay, so let's say you're an engineer. What are the kind of things that engineers do from day to day? What's a normal day for an engineer like? What kinds of technology are around at different time settings that you could know about as an engineer? Things like that. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's really, really good if you want to dive into the role play part of the role playing game, and not the role part with 2 L's and no E.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, most people who get things like that are expecting some crunchy stuff. And if that's what you're hoping for, you are not going to get it there. Don't buy them if that's what you're hoping for. But if what you are hoping for is just more background information about the setting, how to play, how Starfleet officers interact with each other, great stuff there.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dapper, we've gone almost 2 hours.
We have.
Because I don't know why I was worried that we would end short today, because you and I are going to talk about Star Trek. So,
Maddie, we could hypothetically probably talk about Star Trek for 6 more hours and not run out of things to say.
Absolutely, but I need to go to bed. So, what? Oh man, I was gonna ask, what do you have coming up? But I know, because Tuesday, it's Matt with Maddie Tuesday night.
Yeah, it is. Yep, you have the same thing coming up on Tuesday as I do.
Yeah, what else you got coming up?
So on Wednesday, I am releasing a video called... No, not on Wednesday. I'm sorry. On Thursday, I'm releasing a video called Homo Stupidus, in which Brian Thomas from ICR is going to give us his hot takes on human evolution. And boy, are they hot. Yep. He's got some takes, and he's going to tell us all about them. And I'm going to point out how absolutely batshit insane they all are. Let's see. Then on Friday, we are back for episode 2 of Star Trek Endurance. Although, Maddie, you're not going to be there.
That's true. I will not be there. I am traveling out of town for Easter.
My goodness.
I know. Look at me having to have family. Wild.
On an interesting note, 2025 is one of the rare years where all Christians are celebrating Easter on the same day.
What a good year.
Except maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know about them.
I don't know about them. But by all Christians, you mean Eastern Orthodox calendar, Catholic calendar, like Protestant calendar. We're all at the same time.
The Catholics, the Eastern Orthodox, the Oriental Orthodox, the Protestants, all the same time. Church of the East. Everybody's the major branches, the branches that when you sum them up account for virtually every Christian. There you go. So that's a fun thing about this year. I don't know. If you have like Greek or Russian friends, you don't have to wish them happy Easter on a different day.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So let's see. Then on Saturday, I have Dapper Reacts with Kip Davis and Vishanti. And this is going to be a regular Dapper Reacts, but the week after, we are planning on having a special show that is not Dapper Reacts, but with those two, where we just talk about food and drinks.
Amazing.
Because the thing is, we often go on food and drink related tangents. Like this past week, I decided, you know what I should try sometime is making a salmon butter confit and putting that on a bagel. And that was just one of the tangents that we had while trying not to read too much of Bodhi Hodge's book in a row so that we saved our brains.
Yeah, I was about to say, you guys deserve... you need a Bodhi break. You've been reading Bodhi Hodge for too long. You need a Bodhi break.
So long. All year, I think.
Yeah.
So, that's what's coming up. And, so stay tuned for all that cool stuff. I don't know. I feel like pretty much everyone in this audience already knows what's coming up for me. Yeah.
Let's see. Here on OK Roll, all 3 of our episodes of Crash Panda's Prohibition have been released. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out. And then, so we'll be back there's a few shorts that are gonna be released over the next couple weeks, and then we'll be back here in May, second Sunday in May, for another live stream. Allison should be back, but Dapper, it was so nice hanging out with you today. I really appreciate you hopping in here.
It's nice to get
and
a chance to talk about something for an extended period of time that doesn't make me want to pull my scales off.
Yeah. And then our next OK Roll's next edited, filmed live and in person series is Pride and Extreme Prejudice, which is a game by Grant Howitt that asks the question, what if Regency ladies, in addition to having to find husbands, also had to pilot giant mechs? So we're looking
That's a good question. I've always wondered that.
Yeah, it's an important question. May, June, for the release date for that one, and that's 4 episodes. So yeah, looking around early summer for that release one. Yeah. So Dapper, one more time, I'll say thank you so much for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you everybody who's been watching the live stream. Thank you guys for hanging out. Appreciate seeing you guys, and I will see you all soon. Okay. Bye.